everyone. Welcome to this special episode of Game Time. I am interviewing Kyle Thrash. He's a director of this new Eagles documentary called Maybe Next Year. It's chronicling the 2017 Philadelphia Eagles and their run to their historic Super Bowl championship through the eyes of four very hardcore fans. And I finished watching this one this morning, and I put it on again right after I finished watching it because it's such a good and unusual documentary that I couldn't help but watch it all over again to really savor everything that was being profiled here. And I'm very excited to welcome the director of the documentary, as I just mentioned him, Kyle Thrash. He's a New York-based filmmaker who was raised in rural Pennsylvania, born in Philly. He started out as a child actor and switched to the other side of the lens, filming stunt videos, skate videos, music videos, all what have you, and intimate documentaries. And this is certainly one of them. Kyle, thank you so much for taking the time, man. Great to meet you.
Great to meet you too, John. Thanks for that wonderful intro.
Of course, dude. I mean, your work is fantastic, man. I took some time on your website looking at your videos there too as well. Dude, you got a great eye. You've got such great style and a great approach to these different type of media. Tell me about Maybe Next Year, man. How did you get involved with this? Have you been an Eagles fan since growing up? Like, what was your involvement in this? How did it start?
Yeah. I grew up in Pennsylvania. A pretty big Philadelphia sports fans. Both my folks are pretty big sports fans. So I grew up going to the vet. Grew up going to these tailgates, seeing the kind of crazy maniacs that the Philly sports fans tend to be,
right?
And felt like that would be a really good character study to kind of observe, characters through the season. And then the team kept winning, and I ended up, picking the right year to watch, these fans end up getting their first ever Super Bowl win.
Wow. So this was almost a happy accident. You were already profiling this team. You just didn't know they were going to end up with the Super Bowl. What an interesting thing to have happened for you. How did you come about? I'm sure there, as a documentarian, I'm sure there were a bunch of stories that were being told to you, a bunch of stories that you shot. How did you settle in these four people that you profiled here in the documentary?
I felt like the four characters that we chose kind of represent different sides of fandom, whether it's, Shirley with her passion, and like just general positivity. And then Brian, almost the opposite, with his general negativity and his anger and making those rant videos that I feel like a lot of sports fans can relate to when their team lets them down.
Right.
And then you have Barry, who is, kind of represents like obsession, someone who, decided to not go to Florida and spend his retirement money on going there and building a house, but instead built the #1 voted man cave in America, this huge, 1,600 square feet, man cave barn that he invites all his friends over to. And then there's Jesse, who kind of represents legacy with his, his father, passing on, his fandom, and then trying to pass on his fandom to his son, who has special needs. So I feel like between some of those attributes, I feel like, I kind of represented different sides of what it means to be a fan.
Right on. I was born in Philadelphia myself on Jefferson Hospital. Yeah. My mom is, they're both, my parents are immigrants, and they settled in Philadelphia initially for a few years before we moved down to Washington. But I was born in Philly, was there for about a year. Obviously, no concept of sports at 1 year old, but I've always had a strong love for that city and connection for that city. I was an Eagles fan with Wilbert Montgomery and Carmichael and Jaworski for a while. That 80s World Series team, the Phillies World Series team with Steve Carlton and all those guys there. I was such a fan of them. And of course, as I got older, you kind of move away, pick your teams and what have you by your location. But I felt like watching, as a sports fan my entire life, I host a show, that's what we're on now, Game Time, this section of it, but I felt like I had been sections of all four of those people at different ages of my life, and I found that to be such an interesting part of your documentary, that you could gravitate to pieces of all of them if you're anywhere near a sports fan, or if you're a fan of anything, you might have an obsessive nature about, and that mirrors what these four fans were going through.
Yeah, I think when people get into things, I see obviously you have a lot of books behind you, so you look like an pretty well read, and I think when people get into something, I feel like, you almost feel like you find your tribe a bit, you find your community, you end up wanting to, you feel in some way like you identify with those ideas, those people, that community in some way. And I think that it slowly can take over your life in different ways and take over your emotions. And so I think that that's definitely what I was trying to, show, to the point where you then, when you have a kid, you want to pass those, those same things on to them. So
Right.
I'm with you. Definitely, my fandom has, varied in different stages. And I feel like, there's definitely a bit of me in all four of the characters for sure.
Yeah. The YouTube guy, I forget his name again. Is it Charles?
Bryant.
Oh, Brian. Sorry, Brian. That's my 20s right there. I mean, that's my 20s. I was
Sure.
a big Skins fan because I grew up in DC, so we became a Skins fan. That was my 20s when Joe Gibbs left, just kicking things, throwing things at the wall, tearing up living rooms. It's crazy, and also sitting there going, God, I wish I could get a girlfriend. I wish I could find somebody who could deal with this stuff. So I get that, right? But as I get older, I started to I found, as I was watching this documentary, I gravitated more to the older gentleman who built out his man cave and whatever. I'm a soccer fan, so that would be Liverpool for me to do an entire man cave like that. But seeing that, I mean, that was so incredible. What was your reaction when you walked into something like that? You've been a fan of the Eagles, but like to this level must have floored you.
Yeah, I mean, he has like so much memorabilia. I just couldn't believe that. I mean, some things I couldn't believe existed, like an Eagles boogie board. You're like, wait, what? When did the Eagles make a boogie board? Like you couldn't believe that there were some, some of the items, but he has the Dallas Cowboys logo in the bottom of the toilet. So when you're going to the bathroom, you can do your thing on it.
I respect that.
I felt like some of the character and some of the personality that he had, I was blown away by, all of the items and the length that he goes to keep up with it. That, we tried to show in the movie, this 72-year-old man, mowing his lawn and making sure that everything's, taken care of. So he always has the best experience for the people that come over on Sundays.
Yeah. How much of responsibility did you feel showing these fans and their fandom of the Eagles, considering, some of the stereotypes or the names that people have had for, or the way they've looked at Eagles fans in the past? I mean, you do a good job of highlighting that by hearing, like Max Kellerman and other people's audio speaking about these fans. How important was it for you to represent them honestly, but not make them a subject of ridicule?
Yeah, not to make them a subject of ridicule, and also try not to sugarcoat it too much too, right? Like I do think there is some truth to some of that. I mean, some of these events happen, and I wanted to explore it through a pretty objective lens. I think, it's hard to be completely objective, me being a fan, of the team and the city. But I tried to definitely look at the psychology of like what makes people do some of these things. Where do they get the bad reputation? What goes into that? What goes into a reputation for a city? Why do we have a chip on our shoulder? Why do we have this pump the brakes mentality? And so I try to look at those things throughout the movie, and hopefully the viewer can kind of get a deeper look at and a better understanding of where, when the next incident occurs or something may happen, maybe they'll be like, oh, those guys just care a lot. They sometimes just get carried away. But it most of the time, I think it comes from a good place.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know most fandoms that don't have this. I mean, most fandoms of teams that have been around for a very long time, they develop that kind of enduring and undying loyalty that gets passed on generation to generation. Certainly Boston had that with the Red Sox, and you see that here with, I don't think you feel it as much. I mean, I'm on the West Coast now. You don't feel it as much in LA, but you certainly feel it powerfully with these Eagles fans here. Were you, how can I say this correct? Were you shocked by some of this? Did it make you like take a step back about fandom, or did it make you even more of a fan, even more, I don't know, sympathetic or understanding of these fans as you got to know them more?
I definitely think it's beautiful. I think people expressing themselves authentically without any worry about how they look, or or any judgment. I think that that's beautiful, and with any self-expression like that, I think is beautiful. So I think you know, a lot of these fans are completely unabashful. So I love that authenticity, and I love that this is who I am mentality. There's a character, Father Mike, who goes by Helmet Head. You know, we meet him in the parking lot. It's a Saturday. It was the Falcons game, and you know, you see him, you know, down there drinking beers, getting the team, you know, getting his section rallied for an EAGLES chant. And the next day you see him at church. And, you know, I'm sitting through this hour-long, you know, sermon, and very traditional, you know, very quiet, you know, just pretty standard. And right at the end, he goes, "How about that game yesterday? Could you believe it? Julio Jones right through his hands. Like, I can't believe it. I love this team so much. We got 2 more games to go." And then everyone's stepping up and like cheering and going nuts. So I think what I realized, that there's, you know, that fandom can take over anywhere, any person, any sort of event. You know, I think, you know, I think it runs deep, and it's a passion that runs through a lot of different diversity and a lot of different age groups, and even in a place like church, that it can still show itself.
Yeah. Did you find yourself plugging back into the city as you were doing this documentary? Have you always had a very strong connection to the city? Or, you know, I mean, we do, you know, you as successful as you are and going out and doing so many different things, did it make you kind of plug back into the city of, you know, a place that you kind of came from?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I got to learn places I didn't know existed. I got to see the cracks. I got to explore it in a way that I feel like what I was trying to show was an authentic view of Philadelphia, definitely how I view Philadelphia, and you know, blue collar people, hardworking, you know, people. And I feel like I tried to steer away from the classic, just, you know, everyday, you know, art museum, you know, Rocky statue, you know, South Street, Patch Geno's, just like the stereotypical Philly iconography. I tried to show off, you know, Philly and the neighborhoods, the people, you know, to try to show some of the diversity, and also some of the kind of the mom and pop shops that, you know, it's filled with, you know, it's filled with generations of people that have lived in South Philly and other neighborhoods for their whole lives. So I definitely wanted to show off a different side of Philadelphia, and I hope that comes across in the film.
I would say it does, absolutely. You know, because I mean, you're right. You can default to the easiest things that you can when it comes to the fan of any city, but the fact that you're showing this kind of like the grittier side of things, the real hardcore fans that are there year in and year out, week in and week out, living and dying with this team. It was such a great exposure to that. And I got to ask you, there is no voiceover here other than the voice of the Eagles, the announcer for the Eagles. How conscious was that decision for you from the beginning? Or did you have some voiceover script written out and then decided not to go with it? What was your intention there?
Yeah, I always wanted it to feel very present. You know, it was a documentary about a time and a place. So I always, you know, there's hardly any people speaking with like video being over it. It's most of the interviews we did, you're seeing them speak on camera. There's no sit down interviews. There's no experts. I wanted it to feel very intimate and feel like everything they're saying, you're watching them say, you know, on camera, you know, not rehearsed, no narrator. You know, I wanted it to just feel very, very present and intimate and human. So hopefully those things are working towards, you know, the audience kind of feeling connected to the fans and giving them a better understanding on a human level. So
yeah, I say that you accomplished that. As a documentarian, you know, you shoot a bunch of stuff and then you got to cut. Are there stories that it pains you to cut that you really, really wanted to include, but at the end of the day, you just had to take them out to make it a more cohesive documentary? What was that? Were there any of those stories you can tell or talk about?
I mean, there's this character, Chuck, the Tat Man, who has the most NFL tattoos of anyone in the NFL. So he has over 100 some Eagle tattoos. And he's the one at the end of the movie who gets the score of the Super Bowl on his head. Yeah. Wow.
Wow.
He has a pretty good story. And we followed him to the Super Bowl and shot him out in Minnesota, but it just
Yeah.
felt a little distant. So he was an amazing character.
Right on.
Yeah, there were so many. I mean, honestly, everyone helped in some way, with helping the film,
Mm-hmm.
even if they don't end up on screen. I mean, the city of Philadelphia was so gracious with their time,
Yeah.
letting us into their homes, feeding us. We ate so well everywhere we go. Oh, you guys want food? Oh, just, yeah, here's something. Eat it on the road. Eat it on the road. Everyone was so gracious.
Yeah.
So all the stories that didn't make it still really helped the film, shape. So
Yeah.
every character had a part.
You got to have a backbone to this country, or any country really, and it's people like this, hardworking people, blue collar people. I've always respected that, always appreciated that, and you're seeing it here now, getting highlighted so well in your documentary. I would say, me personally, I just loved seeing that. There wasn't the guys in the boxes and whatever having they're having their breeches or whatever. This was people who were like, live and breathe this stuff to the end. And you showed multiple generations, all the way through. You've got shots of young people, male and female, older people kind of, and then, even older people. And of course, I tell you, I was moved by the gentleman whose father was, experiencing cancer. My father died of cancer. So watching that expression, the Super Bowl where the Giants beat the Patriots, that was the last Super Bowl we saw together. And so it was like, he died about three weeks later. And so it was like that moment, that seeing that and that living through his pain and talking with his mom there at the kitchen table, I had those discussions. And so it's like, it was incredible to see it, captured so well by what you did, because you put just enough in it. You didn't, it wasn't overdone. It wasn't melodramatic. It was there for you to track the progress of what was happening as the Eagles season was going along. And her comment, how a victory by these Eagles would be even better for him than chemotherapy, was such a powerful line to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think sports can do a lot for people. Passion, like it in that moment, it was normalcy for them. Being able to watch it and and to have that memory that cherish. I think a lot of parents and the kids spend a lot of time talking about sports. I know I talk to both my dad and my mom more during the Eagles and Phillies season than I do on the off season. It's like the most my mom talks to me is like, who's coming in from the bullpen for the Phillies, and then when they're not playing, it's crickets. So I feel like it's a way for a lot of people to have that common ground between family members. And yeah, we definitely tried to show that. I love where he says, growing up, he thought football was called "Get That Mother Effer," because that's all he heard his dad say was "Get that mother effer, get that So yeah, it's something for the family to do, and I think you have those types of real colorful memories that you have with your family. So I hope the film has can do, hopefully can remind people like your experience of what it was like with their family.
Absolutely. What were some of the challenges that you didn't anticipate as you were shooting this documentary, man? I'm sure, like we said, or I said earlier, like on your website, there's a lot of different types of stuff that you've done. What was unique about this that challenged you as a filmmaker and also as a storyteller?
Yeah, definitely what we mentioned before, like leaving things on the cutting room floor,
Okay.
trying to figure out what the right blend of characters is, the right diversity, being in more places than you want to be at once. Each game, I mean, you have to think, as a filmmaker, I'm kind of like a gambler, right?
Yeah.
Where the Atlanta game, which is the divisional round, I'm thinking, okay, well, we need to figure out if the story ends now, what are we going to do?
Right.
But we also have to be prepared if they run to Broad Street. It's like you have to have a plan A and a plan B, because you're documenting
Right.
something that you're not in control. I'm not in control of the ending. The team is, So each week was difficult in preparing to be like, okay, well, we could do this, we could do that. So by the time the Super Bowl came, I had multiple camera crews around Philadelphia, again, one in Minnesota. So it was like, it grew to this thing. So it was kind of like, very last minute, and, and it was challenging to feel like I wanted to be everywhere, because it's, and it's, you watch the news the next day and you see something, you go, oh, where were we? Why didn't we catch that? Like, it's tough to feel like you want to make sure you're not missing anything. So you're gambling on where things are going to happen. You're gambling on where the cameras are going to be. You're gambling on if they're going to win. It's a lot of just hoping and keeping your fingers crossed. Like, I'm hoping the team's going to do this. I'm hoping where our cameras are going to give us good results. So it was a learning experience, kind of going through something that I didn't necessarily have control of the story.
Did you find that you were good with your budget? Did you have to try to get more money? Did you have to, did people come and get more involved as they saw the season becoming what it was becoming?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to partner with this company, Wavelength Productions, that was able to help with a lot of support, and they helped us. We had 914 Pictures out of Philly help us with some of the editing and work with us, and then Bow and Arrow out of LA. So I couldn't be more thankful with the partners that we accrued through the process to continue help in different ways and get us the broadcast, the sports broadcast, just partnerships and certain things that, it started very small, as a passion project, and it grew into being like, well, we're capturing, this right now. And a lot of people helped out in a lot of different ways. So definitely, it helped finding the right partners to get different aspects.
Yeah, you could almost argue that this film is like what they used to produce, from out of NFL films for every team. They'd have that season recap or whatever, and they'd put it out at the end of the year when it was over, whether you won the Super Bowl or not. You got one of those, or you could get one of those. This feels like the same thing, but done from the fans' perspective, which I found that to be such a uniquely interesting approach.
Yeah, we wanted to show something. We wanted to show something different. Excuse me. I know that they've, the Eagles organization had put out content, and it's, it's all about the players and stuff like that. And we wanted to cover something that was our own, something a little bit more unique. And and that's why you don't really see a lot of football. It really is about how the people are reacting to what's on the field. So the story is really about what's being, happening off the field.
Right.
And I felt like, there's an ecosystem that kind of occurs, and you kind of, you see it when you go down to a tailgate. And we wanted to kind of capture that, whether it's characters like we call the vultures, those guys that hang out after games and pick up all the beers, or it's Sonny, awesome. The Sonny that goes down and on a scooter and, and sings, and does karaoke. Or it's even the cops, driving around with the police officers and getting their perspective. Like I was trying to show different perspectives of what the tailgate and the fan community is like. Yeah. And none of that really has anything to do with the team. It was really just about that. Some of the early influences was this doc called Heavy Metal Parking Lot.
And I've seen that one. Yeah.
Okay. So like, like, that
awesome.
It's just, they're going to, heavy metal concerts, and they're just capturing what it's like to be a metal fan, but just video, just letting them be. And that's what we were, that was kind of one of the initial ideas. So I'm happy that I feel like while we have a lot of the stories, there's a lot of those moments where it's people, a guy blowing up his hand with a firework.
Right.
It's people puking, it's people getting thrown through a table. Like, I was trying to kind of show what it feels like to be in that environment.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Do you think it's the cold of the East Coast that makes people do that? Because you're seeing it now in the Bills Mafia, these guys putting each other through tables and stuff. Like, do you think it's just the fact that it's so cold there? You're just like, oh, sure, I'm crazy and my senses are all heightened. I'll do it, whatever. Do you think that's what that's all about?
I mean, I think it definitely plays a part. I mean, you're cold, you start drinking early to get warm, and then before you know it, you're like, that sounds like a good idea. I'll jump off this, I mean, Bills Mafia, man, like, is bar for bar, one of the best fan bases in the country.
Agreed.
They do the ketchup and mustard on the guy with the hot dogs. They do the tables. I mean, and again, they lost 4 Super Bowls in a row. So you got to think like they've gone through it too, that heartbreak, through the Jim Kelly era. So I think they're great. I think the cold definitely plays something into a little bit more hardened, a little bit more grit, and on Sundays, I think it's like, everyone's out there freezing. Let's have a good time. Let's warm up. Let's move around a little bit,
Let's throw each other through tables. I love it. Yeah. The other part of this, and you mentioned something earlier, and I just want to touch on this. So as I was watching it, and I didn't see a lot of NFL highlights, I thought, oh, it's probably licensing issues and money stuff. But this sounds to me like what you said was it was a conscious decision not to show too much of the highlights, so you could just live the experience through the fans as they were watching these plays occur in real time as you were filming them.
Correct. Yeah. All the footage is shown through TVs. Like, we don't ever cut to being like, here is high definition quality footage of the Super Bowl, of the playoffs. It's always shown through, through a television. Cause we always were trying to never kind of break that experience of this is about them watching it, not about us like remembering the game so much. So we had to use the footage to make sure that people know what's going on and for a little bit of entertainment, but we tried to keep it the focus on the fans.
Right. As you were doing this throughout the season, rather, did you hear from players? Did you have players reach out or members of the Eagles reach out to you and want to be part of the documentary? Did you have to turn some of these players down, or any of these coaches or representatives of the Eagles organization at all? Or would they just kind of let you do your thing?
Yeah, we were pretty quiet. We were honestly, like, full transparency. I didn't know how they were going to react. So when you're shooting down at the parking lots, we were just going down there. We didn't, it's the public. So, your public space, so your public property. So you're allowed to, film in certain parking lots, but we just wanted to play it safe. And, since then, the Eagles have supported the documentary, and they invited me down to the NovaCare Center where the team practices, and I got to be there and watch a practice and stuff. So they've been really gracious. But it started out kind of just doing it on our own and not even letting anybody know.
Right. What's your memory of it now in retrospect? It's coming out now. I mean, you shot it back in 2017, 2018. It's coming out now. It's available now. For those of you who are watching or listening to this interview, it is available now. You can get it wherever you stream movies. There, it's called Maybe Next Year. You got to watch it. So what's your experience now emotionally as a filmmaker and as a human being, looking back on that experience and looking back on this film as kind of a time capsule of a pretty incredible season?
Yeah, I mean, I just feel lucky to be, in a time and a place where something I think really magical happened. I think, especially in a time where we're divided, but also like not being with each other. I mean, we don't get to have tailgates right now. It's, for me, I'm glad I captured that. I think it's a good memory. I think hopefully we'll come out of this and we'll all be able to go back to the games the way that we used to do. But for me, it's definitely, it's special to watch that and remember how much fun the games can be, because it definitely feels different, watching the games at home and not being there with people, not being able to go to the games and not being there with all my friends and family watching the games. So that's really nice. And it's it's emotional for me, and exciting maybe is even a better word, because it's my first, it's my debut feature. It's came out today, and it's really cool to see the reaction and even hear from people like you and to talk about it. It's very exciting.
Yeah. So time will come soon enough when we put each other through tables again in the cold of Philly, for sure. I can't wait. I can't wait. You don't find that in LA. They don't do that in LA. It's a shame. But another thing, I'm asking you a really cheesy question, Kyle. Has this changed you at all, man, doing this documentary, having this whole experience as a filmmaker? I mean, I asked you about what you think about fondly, but like, has it changed you internally in any way?
Yeah, I think every project I take on changes me in some way. And this one for me, I got to see how deep fandom runs. For me, it really comes back to like, it reinforced a lot of what I thought about the team. And I was able to, in the fan base, and, kind of represent where that heart comes from and all that grit. And I don't know, I have such an affinity for the fan base and for that city. So it definitely, I guess, it just reaffirmed a lot of what I believed and showed how deep that love runs.
So. Mm-hmm. Do you have a project that you're already working on now that you're thinking about doing next that you can talk about at all?
Sure. Yeah, I
Okay.
leave for Flint, Michigan on Friday. I'm working
Whoa.
on a documentary about with
About the
the nonprofit Last Prisoner Project
wow.
about this uh this man who was incarcerated back in 1994 for selling 3 pounds of marijuana. He was
Okay.
sentenced to 42 to 60 years, an insane sentence
Wow.
under the habitual offender law. He's up for clemency. And basically, the story not only is about him, but it's also about as weed begins to legalize around this country, we have to remember that over 40,000 nonviolent people are in
Mhm.
prison for selling or using marijuana, and we have to remember that we have to look at these people's cases as people continue to make a lot of money off of legal marijuana.
Yeah.
Michigan, in Flint, it's legal recreationally to buy marijuana and smoke marijuana if you're
Right.
if you're 21. So we have to remember that there's a lot of people that have been hurt by the war on cannabis over the
Mhm.
past decade. So we're putting a spotlight on that, on how we got to this place, and trying to create a path forward, and using Michael's story told through
Mhm.
his family as they fight for him to get out of prison. So his
Wow.
his public hearing is on Tuesday. So we're hoping we're going to get some good news soon from the governor,
Right.
who hopefully he'll be out very soon, and
Yeah.
be able to be reunited with his family.
That's
So
Governor Whitmer, right? Gretchen Whitmer, who
Governor
was,
Whitmer,
yeah, yeah,
yes, sir.
who's the subject
Yep.
of that possible kidnapping. Yeah, it's so interesting how the world works. And of course, there's so many levels to that because we just saw what I think in Oregon they passed the
Yep.
law that you can have certain amounts of any recreational
Decriminalized.
drug almost, and
Yep.
you're okay, and you won't get put in jail or anything like that. So yeah, it's amazing how things change as we become more comfortable as a society with certain things and start to look at these things. Certainly, that idea of putting people in prison for something that is a small amount of drugs to go to that level is insane, and there has to
Right.
be a balance. So I'm glad you're taking that on, man. It's going to be fun. I mean, not fun, but it's going to be interesting and educational to watch, I'm sure.
Yeah, hopefully it's enlightening. Hopefully it, will help a lot of other people that are in the same situation.
Mm,
Again, you have to think about it's like we're at that corner of, like, of prohibition really being
yeah,
ended, in the
yeah,
same way, alcohol. And you have to think there were a lot of bootleggers that were in prison that, that were, for illegally selling booze. And
yeah,
you have to think about, resentencing, granting clemency, expunging their records
yep.
as marijuana becomes legal, and also giving them a place in the marijuana industry so
Mhm.
that they can profit off of what really the war on drugs was really has been a proxy war also
Yeah,
for race
yeah,
in this country. So yeah,
cool.
I'm excited to tell his story and to be with his family this Friday in Flint, and hoping for positive news out of the public hearing on Tuesday.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll ask you two last questions before we wrap up real quick. One, were you able to enjoy these games even though you were documenting them? Did you have to kind of remove yourself as a fan and become only a director? So is it kind of bittersweet, or were you able to really indulge in the victories that they were having that season?
I mean, there's a moment during the Super Bowl and in the movie where you can see me for a split second, because
Oh,
I couldn't believe. I think it was the Brandon Graham's strip sack where I just was going bananas, and I just couldn't care less that we were filming, that I was working. I just couldn't care less
right.
because I just was so excited. So yes, I was definitely constantly towing the line between being like, this is insane, we're doing it, to also being like, make sure we get that shot over there, can we get a close-up? It was like balancing the line between
Right.
those two energies.
And one last question. Did any of your crew get hurt when Brian was tearing up his rooms or throwing stuff around? Did any of that experience kind of damage you guys in any way, shape, or form? Because I found myself reflexively ducking at times when I was watching the movie, because he's so powerful when he's doing his anger throughout
Yeah,
those videos.
not in any of the Bryant scenes, but we did get a bottle thrown at the camera during the riots. And there was
Wow.
just, obviously, during the riots, there was
Yeah.
just people getting shoved, and it was it was mayhem during the riots. But
Right.
Brian took it easy on us when we were there, in at least in that respect. he didn't hurt us too much.
Yeah. Were you guys in danger at any time, or was it only the riots that you really felt any kind of danger while you were shooting?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, danger. It's not like I was, it's not like I was really scared or anything like that. It's a big energy, and you're making sure that your crew is safe and the gear is safe. When the bottle hits the camera, we're making sure that the camera didn't break, and so no, we felt fine, but it's exciting. It's really the energy in that type environment. And the parade environment and a tailgate environment is very much like you're always kind of like looking over your shoulder to see like the firework going off. Like we all, that's a good example of all of us, like, the camera like spins and we're like, ducking from this firework that was supposed to shoot in the sky and instead blew up right on the ground. So, it was a lot of definitely watching our backs for sure.
Right on, right on. Well, it was great to see, dude. I got to tell you, Kyle, I thoroughly enjoyed it. As I said, I already watched it twice. I'm sure I'll watch it again at some point in the future as well. It's called Maybe Next Year. It's out now. Everybody, even if you're not an Eagles fan, if you're any kind of sports fan or a fan of anything that you are, you're crazy about, obsessed about, or that you just love, this is a documentary that will speak to you and is available on all platforms right now for you all to watch. It's an hour. It's a brisk hour and 22 minutes. It's over before you know it. And it's a fun experience that you want to share with anybody who's into these kinds of things for sure. And of course, as Kyle mentioned himself, it is a feature film directorial debut. So go give him some love. New talent. It's always good to support new talent when they come on the scene as they've built their career up and their resume up. So Kyle, thanks, dude. Thanks for taking the time, man. It was great to meet you.
Yeah, you too, John. I really appreciate your support, and saying all those kind things about the movie and having me on, man. I really appreciate the conversation.
Man, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. Thanks for taking the time. KyleThrash.com is where you want to go to see his other stuff. You can follow him. You see the social media on the graphics that are there. Go and follow him and all that stuff and support what he's got going on. Okay, as for us, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel down below, the Outlaw Nation channel. Give this film a like and share this. Give this video a like and share this video on your social media. And we'll talk to you next time with another interview episode here from Game Time.